And welcome to another edition of the Twins Wrap with the television play-by-play voice of the Minnesota Twins, Dick Bremer. I am Derek Hansen with you here on the Drive Time News Hour. It's again sponsored by Jefferson Lions. And, well, Dick, the Twins, a tough extra inning loss on Sunday. And I think, they got a 5.5 game lead ahead of the Cleveland Indians. They face them this upcoming week, and we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But I think this team, and it's not so much figuratively because they're still in an okay spot being in first place, but literally this team is kind of limping into the All-Star break here.
Yeah, they're, I think should be credited to some degree to play, 500 ball or something close to it the last, because that second marathon extra inning game, that 18-inning loss to Tampa Bay of the homestand a week and a half ago, really seemed to sap their strength a little bit. So I expect we'll see a much more rejuvenated Twins team once we get the second half started in Cleveland on Friday night.
Because when you lose C.J. Cronin, do we talk about him enough? What he has been able to do. He's replacing a guy who's just got his number retired with the organization, and he's been very good, not just offensively, but we forget how good Joe got to be with the glove, too.
Yeah, he's really good defensively, and that allows, of course, Sano to play at third base where he's better suited to play. Our eyes can move around a little bit. The main thing is they need to get Eddie Rosario back in the lineup because he really anchors not just the outfield, but the team. I think we're all looking forward to the day when we've got Rosario, Buxton, and Kepler across that outfield. And the hope is that a few days rest will allow everybody to mend whatever aches and pains that they've had to deal with, and they can start that season in Cleveland with their full roster.
You mentioned it, Eddie Rosario. I was at a Cubs game a few years ago. I think it was 15, and he turned in. He caught a shortstop sleeping or whatever, and I think that's when I really realized, man, this guy's just got something special about him. And that was at Target Field against the Cubs. I don't know if you remember that, but
yeah, well, he's just got an energy about him, a confidence that I think this team has missed, to be perfectly honest with you. It's not like this Twins team has gone 3-12 in their last 15 games. The Indians have trimmed the lead back because they've been playing incredibly well as the Twins did in the first 2 months of the season. So there will be a race. That's the exciting thing. And we'll see how that first series of 4 between the Indians and Twins goes when we get to Cleveland on Friday. But it will be better, much better for the Twins, I think, to have Rosario hopefully back in the lineup Friday night.
I want to ask you a little bit about the play. I think a lot of people have been talking about going back to the Sunday game. Byron Buxton just doing what he does. You think he's not going to be able to take up and get to third easily. And who would have thunk that was going to be the kind of deciding factor of the Twins having to go 11 innings, another extra inning game for the Twins?
Yeah, it took a perfect throw from Joey Gallo, who showed off his arm strength the game before when he threw one from center field all the way to the Champions Club. But he came up with a really good throw. It took a perfect throw to get Byron, and unfortunately, Scope was hustling down the line. It's not like he was, tiptoeing down the line. He was hustling down the line, but, Byron got to third base before Scope could get home because he's a faster runner, and they ended up running themselves out of it, a scoring opportunity. That run would have meant the difference between a win or a loss. So not a bad play by Byron, but one of the rare times when his speed actually cost the Twins rather than the Twins benefiting from it.
And it was so nice. It's nice to get Buxton back. You and I have talked about this the past couple of weeks, what a difference he makes. But then you mentioned Rosario out, and it's nice to have him back, but then all these other pieces come about. So going back to your original statement, it's just going to be nice to get this starting 9 back together.
Yeah, we haven't seen much of that, remembering that Sano missed most of the first 2 months, when he had his lacerated heel. So injuries are a part of it. And the Indians know better than anybody else, what can happen if some key players get hurt. But they've gotten healthier now, at least among the position players. The Twins have been a little dinged up. So it'll be nice to see Crone at first eventually, Scope at second, Polanco at short, Sano at third, Garver Castro behind the plate, and those 3 guys out there in the outfield. That's what this Twins team really is going to rely on. They hope in the second half a healthy roster.
And not to mention the pitching staff, too. A guy who's supposed to pitch tonight, Jaco Odorizzi, can't because of a blister. And, hopefully that can get straightened out because it'd be a shame if that's nagging with all the success he's had the first half of the season.
Yeah, you're going to, you've had some nagging injuries like that in the rotation, but again, you're not going to get any sympathy from the Indians, who lost Corey Kluber to a broken arm, Mike Clevenger with a strained lat, and the terrible situation surrounding Carlos Carrasco. My goodness, those are, could argue that they're top three starters, and they've all been, out of commission for quite some time now. So, you got to stay healthy, and I think, you've got to give the Twins front office some credit. They've tried to, freshen players up and not overwork them in the first half. And I suspect that'll probably change, that they'll be a little bit more demanding of the players in the second half, because a lot of time was given in the first half to keep the players fresher now for the second half.
You mentioned it, and sports are so mental, and baseball can be too. And you got to think, with Cleveland playing so well, it's one thing if you're playing for a guy because he got injured playing or whatever, but when you start bringing up leukemia and cancer, that's a whole different animal for people mentality. That puts a fire in the belly for a lot of people. And I don't know if that really translates to what's going on with Cleveland not being able to beat or what the deal is, but boy, that's got to really, get a fire in that clubhouse.
Well, one of the Cleveland players said as much the other day, saying, we're playing for Carlos. And from the time that his diagnosis was, privately given to the players, that they have played much better baseball. They had a terrible series just a week ago in Cleveland, or in Baltimore, I should say. They were lucky to win the one game that they won. But, this is a team that has typically played second half, and I think the Twins front office, I think the players know that they're going to be in for a dogfight in the American League Central. The Indians are a really good team. They've got some playoff-tested players on the team that the Twins don't have yet. So it's going to be an interesting race. As I said before, there are 4 series left, 13 games left between the Indians and the Twins. And I think we all can remember what it's been like for a team and the fan base to be involved in a pennant race. Well, I think we're going to have one in the second half this year.
I hope it has a better ending, but Dick, does this remind you a little bit of 2001 where, people are buzzing about this team because the Twins have been relevant for the first time in a long time, Tom Kelly's last year, and they fell a little bit short to Cleveland in the American League Central, but these two teams battling it out, Twins got off to a hot start, so this is kind of fun that way anyway.
But, you've got to acknowledge that the Twins were, they did their due diligence in bringing in players like Marwin Gonzalez and Nelson Cruz and Jonathan Scope, who've all had some postseason experience. C.J. Cron was part of a really good team, with the Rays last year. So those guys, I think, who weathered the pennant races in the past, should be able to provide some, stability, if you will, for a roster that really hasn't gone through much of it. Although this is a team that just a couple of years ago, found its way in the wild card game. So they know what it's like to play big series in July, August, and September.
Yeah, you are right. That group that came up together and started making waves in 2001, they were all pretty green as far as any postseason experience, that is for sure. We are here with the play-by-play voice of the Minnesota Twins here on this All-Star Tuesday. We always talk so much about Sano, you and I have, and it looked like, it wasn't very good, but boy, what a week he has had going into the All-Star break. That's one bad. It's too bad that this break's coming to, hopefully he keeps that thing going coming up starting on Friday.
Yeah, he's had much better at-bats, particularly on the road. I think the Texas series was a good one for him in terms of, having good at-bats, drawing some walks, not striking out as often. Because if he can start to figure things out, he'll very quickly move his way up the lineup and not, hit 7th or 8th or, wherever he's been. This is a lineup that potentially could be even more dangerous in the second half if Sano has figured some things out and can not just hit home runs, but be more of an on-base producer as well by drawing some walks. This lineup could be very formidable in the second half.
Does it concern you at all, though, if they do move him up? I mean, it seems like he's hitting better later in the lineup. I mean, it's one of those, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of things, or does you just think for the strength of this team he has to go back up to that 5th spot?
Yeah, I mean, that'll be a game-by-game decision. A lot of people have been clamoring for Byron Buxton to hit higher than 9th now that he's cut down on his strikeouts and has become a much better 2-strike hitter. As you said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why anyone would want to tinker too much with a Twins lineup that's, slugging at an historic rate, not just in Twins history, but in Major League history. They're still on a pace to set the record for highest slugging percentage by a team over a season, hit more home runs than anybody else ever has. So, yeah, I think you'd want to be pretty delicate with the lineup in terms of making any major revisions.
That is for sure. Let's talk about the catching situation because, Mitch Garver, I thought he was going to have another marathon game. He did have to catch 11 innings, but 17, 18, and 11? This guy, for no more for his offense, but he's done a good job defensively, and he's had a grind here the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, with all the extra inning games, and it's not a coincidence that the longest extra inning games have been caught by Mitch, and I don't mean this in any way as a slight to Jason Castro, but for Garver to catch almost all of the 18-inning game, all of the 17-inning game, the 12-inning one, and the one Sunday against the Rangers, they've all been low-scoring games, and I think that is as good a mark as any alongside Garver's name for how much he's improved defensively, both in terms of calling a game, catching a game, throwing runners, pitching, framing pitches, whatever. He's really made huge strides this year, in addition to the numbers he's had offensively. Now, all that said, I think it's going to be interesting to see if the Twins continue, as I suspect they will, to basically have an alternating, not so much a platoon system behind the plate, but an alternating system. Only one time in the first half did the Twins have the same starting catcher 3 games in a row. And in that string of games, there was an off day in the middle of those 3 games. I expect we'll see the Twins rotating catchers regularly in the second half. And baseball is very much a copycat sport. And as long as the Twins are getting the results that they've gotten offensively and otherwise from their catchers, I wouldn't be surprised to see this to be kind of the template moving forward in terms of how to handle a catching staff.
Yeah, because you're right. If the postseason started today, who would be the main guy? Because usually that sorts itself out coming in October, but I don't know if I could put one guy way ahead of the other right now.
Yeah, Garver had such a good first half. Castro got off to a good start, then had a bit of a slump, couple of weeks where he wasn't hitting well, but he went into the break swinging the bat really well. Well, when you've got a catcher who's hitting, and then you look over and you got another catcher who's hitting, well, maybe it's the way the catchers have been handled in terms of not, grinding them to dust in the first half of the year and making them catch, 5 games in a row before, giving them a bit of a break. So I expect we'll see Garver and Castro handled in the second half, much the way we saw them handled in the first half.
Well, it's going to be a fun second half, and it really, starting Friday, what a way to get going, right? I mean, I'm glad they're opening in Cleveland. This is the way it should be. All right, let's get right to it.
Well, you got a 5.5 game lead. If you're a follower of the Twins, your team's got a 5.5 game lead. And some of the best times I've ever had as a broadcaster is, in that run we had where it seemed like it was the Twins and the White Sox every year. And those series with the White Sox were so much fun, mainly because the Twins did pretty well in those series, having won 6 of the division titles in, 9 years. But just, substitute Cleveland for Chicago, because that's where the Twins are right now. Cleveland is their big rival, and we've got 4 series coming up with them. It should be an awful lot of fun because the Indians are playing well. Despite the difficulty that the Twins had the last couple of weeks, they're playing well. They've got, second or third best record in the league. It's going to be a fun second half, and I think Twins fans should buckle up because this is going to be a fun second half with a lot of really great baseball.
Dick, I think also the other part of that is then we're going to start seeing who's buyers and sellers, and I think the off-the-field stuff will keep people buzzing. That's a good thing. At least people are talking about the Twins. They want to see this team improve as far as the bullpen is concerned, so that adds to the excitement, I think, as far as a fan anyway.
Yeah, it will, and then you have to remember that there's no August waiver trade deadline anymore, so all the activity will be from now till July 31st. Probably, in my mind, an overdue correction for baseball to make. Put the focus on where now the Indians have gotten back into the race, to be sure, and they played good baseball. So a team that was thought to be a probable seller just a couple of weeks ago, well, that's probably not the case now. And so we'll see what the Indians do, what the Twins do, and see how active all the contending teams are. before the trade deadline at the end of this month.
Do you still enjoy the All-Star game as much as ever? I love the announcements and all that. I mean, and there's, we've had the game mean the World Series and all that. What's your take? Do you still enjoy it as much as ever?
I enjoy the game. I completely dismiss the home run derby. That's a non-event for me. I mean, I see enough home runs during the regular season. I don't need to see the pretend ones in the home run derby. That I guess the year that Justin Morneau won it and beat Josh Hamilton, I watched the final round. That's been the extent of it for me. But I do enjoy the game. I do like to see the matchups that you get in an all-star game. The best pitchers of the game against the best hitters. I do find the game interesting. And I'm gratified to know that the players in baseball still look at the all-star game as a big event and something to strive for. I know it's not the case in the NFL. I suspect it's not nearly the case in the NBA or the NHL. But for me, the baseball game, the All-Star game, is still something worth watching.
Well, Dick, you enjoy the game tonight, and looking forward to this upcoming weekend in Cleveland. When we talk to you next, the Twins will be back home at Target Field after that 3-game series in Cleveland for a 2-gamer starting a homestand with 2 games against the Mets. So thanks so much. We'll talk to you again next week.
You got it, Derek.
Dick Bremer, the television voice of the Minnesota Twins, joins us each and every Tuesday for the Twins Wrap, sponsored by Jefferson Lines. Jefferson Lines, your number one bus experience for over 100 years, serving North Dakota and cities throughout the Midwest. Again, that starts every Tuesday, 5:45. And then if time allows, if we do have a Couch Potato Radio with a regular Twins start with a 6:30 pregame show, he joins me for part 2, 6:15 up until that